Hello.
Hello, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good afternoon, viewers. Welcome to GST Knowledge Empowerment Webinar Series 2, Day 7 by Hiragange Academy. The topic for today is job work, planning and compliance under GST, including implication of landmark judgments under Central Excise and GST. We have with us CA Mahadev, a learned and eminent speaker. Yeah, CA Mahadev R is a practicing chartered accountant since 2011, partner at Hiragange and Associates. He has advised clients across many manufacturing and service industries on various issues under GST and erstwhile indirect taxes. Presently, he is heading Audit and Compliance Division at Hiragange and Associates. He has assisted authors of books like Central Excise Made Simple, Practical Guide to Service Tax, and recently authored a book on GST for BCom course for Bangalore University, and co-authored a book, A Practical Guide to GST Audit and Certification. And he is an active contributor of articles to Karnataka State Chartered Accountant Association Journal, articles on CA Club India, GST Law Times, and Hiragange Academy newsletters. And he's also a speaker in seminars at forums such as ASCAA, CNAZ Office, ICI Bangalore Study Circle, and Hiragange Academy. So with this, I request Mr. Mahadev, CA, to take it forward this session on the job. And before handing over to Mahadev, I request all the viewers to put your queries in the Q&A section so that we can clear all the answers for the Q&A towards the end of the session. So with this, I request Mr. Mahadev to take it forward. Mahadev, handing over to you.
Thank you, Subba Reddy. Firstly, I would like to thank Hiragange and Academy for giving me this wonderful opportunity to deliberate on this topic, job work compliance, planning in GST, and few judicial precedents. Actually, I would have preferred the face-to-face training. It is very strange that I can't see any of you and I have to deliberate the session. Otherwise, I would have preferred face-to-face with the interactive session, wherein I could have asked you questions and found the answers. But here, I had to ask you the questions as well as I had to answer for my questions on my own. With this, we'll start the session. The concept of job work or taxation of this job work is not new in GST. So even before GST, in pre-GST era, we had the concept of job work, whether it could be service tax, whether it could be VAT, or it could be a central excise law. We had the concept of job work. So in VAT, what used to happen is the VAT was levied on sale of goods. So there was no tax on job work activity unless there used to be some use of minor materials. Similarly, there was a levy of central excise, but the central excise levy was there only when this job work activity was amounting to a manufacturing activity. If there was no manufacturing activity, then there was no central excise duty levy as well. If a particular activity was amounting to manufacturing, there was a levy of central excise duty. If it was not amounting to manufacturing of product, then service tax was coming into a picture. So either there used to be levy of service tax or there used to be a levy of central excise duty. But in both the laws, there was a exemption subject to certain conditions. We will take a background of these laws, because if you see the conditions which are there in job work provisions in GST, many are similar to what we had in central excise law. So if we get a background of the central excise law or service tax law to a certain extent, we can understand this job work provision in GST law very well. First, we'll see the meaning of job work which was there in central excise law. If you can refer to the GST definition, it is very similar to what we had in central excise law as well. Only thing is in GST law, it is very small and it has been made very simple. The central excise law definition says job work means processing or working on upon the raw materials or semi-finished goods supplied to the job worker so as to complete a part or whole process resulting in manufacture or finishing of an article or any operation which is essential for aforesaid process. So if we observe, so it includes supply of raw material or semi-finished goods from a principal manufacturer to the job worker for carrying out any process. The process may amount to manufacture or may not amount to manufacture. However, the payment of excise duty by the job worker was leading to additional burden for the job workers. So therefore, there was a notification, very old notification, 119 bar 1975. So through that notification, there was a exemption from payment of excise duty for the job workers. So this notification was there till the another famous notification, notification number 214 bar 86, which was introduced in the year 1986. So in 214 bar 86 also similar condition was there. What they did is in 214 bar 86 they said that if the principal manufacturer gives an undertaking to the job worker that the principal manufacturer will pay the excise duty, then the job worker, even though he was manufacturing the goods, there was no levy of excise duty on such manufacturer. The only condition was taking an undertaking from this principal manufacturer and submitting that undertaking to the excise range of the job worker as well as the excise range of the manufacturer. Remember, this was only a intimation. This was not a permission as such. There were few important decisions of the Supreme Courts with this aspect. One was that who becomes a manufacturer? When the substantial activity is undertaken by the job worker, including substantial supply of goods by the job worker, then the courts held that the job worker will be considered as a manufacturer. If we take one example, Union of India versus Cibato Limited, 1985 Supreme Court decision. So in this decision, it was held that when only technical specification was supplied by the customer and all the goods which are required for manufacturing of these goods were procured by the job worker, including that manufacturing activity. So in this case, the Supreme Court held that the job worker will be considered as a manufacturer for the purpose of excise duty. And unless the person who gave the technical specification gave a undertaking that he will pay the excise duty, the levy used to be on the job worker. Similarly, there was a decision of the Supreme Court in case of manufacturing of agarbattis by household ladies. So in this case, CCE versus MN Kammatwala case, what used to happen is the household ladies were hired to manufacture this agarbattis and dhoops. So what they used to do is they used to procure all the goods themselves and they used to manufacture it at their house. So the Supreme Court held that they cannot be considered as a hired laborers, but they were to be treated as manufacturers of this agarbattis and dhup. And accordingly, the levy was there on such household ladies, subject to fulfillment of condition of 214 or 86. So with this little background of central excise duty, now we'll get into GST era. So if you remember this definition of job work in central excise, if you see the job work definition in GST, it is very, very similar. Section 2, subsection 68 says that job work means any treatment or process undertaken by a person on the goods belonging to another registered person, and expression job worker shall be considered accordingly. So here we need to understand few important terms. First term is what is this treatment or process? The next term which you have to understand is what do you mean by the goods belonging to another person? Then it says that the goods should be belonging to another registered person. So what happens if I do this job work activity for a unregistered person? So these are all the some of the issues or the questions for which we will find answers in subsequent slides. And the expression job worker shall be considered accordingly. So if I do a process or treatment on the goods which are belonging to another registered person, then I will be considered as a job worker. So as I said, the important aspect to be considered are treatment or process. What do you mean by on the goods belonging to another person? Then what happens if I do this activity for another unregistered person? Will it make any difference if I do this for a registered person? Will it make any difference if I do this for a unregistered person? Before moving on to the next slide, what we need to understand is whether the job work activity will be considered as supply of service or supply of goods. This is very, very important. If you remember, there were a lot of services where lot of services or lot of activities wherein there was a confusion in pre-GST era whether particular activity to be considered as supply of goods or whether it should be considered as providing of service. The best example which I can think of now is the software. If you had seen the bills of Wipro or the companies like Infosys, Microsoft, everybody used to charge both sales tax at the rate of 5% as well as service tax at the rate of 15%. It cannot be both the taxes, right? So a particular activity can become a sale of goods or it can become a supply of service. But all these companies used to charge both these taxes mainly because VAT department used to argue that supply or development of a software is sale transaction, which is goods, sale of goods. Whereas service tax department used to argue that it is a declared service covered under the service tax law and development of software is a provision of service which should be subject to service tax law. So because of this confusion, there used to be levy of VAT as well as service tax law. So to avoid all this confusions, so what we have now is Schedule 2 to the CGST Act. So this Schedule 2 covers list of activities which would be considered as either supply of goods or supply of service. So one entry which is there in the Schedule 2 is any treatment or process which is applied to another person's goods will be considered as supply of services. Now doubt may arise, what happens if I use some of my own goods? Say for example, electroplating activity. So what happens is I am a manufacturer of some components. I want my job worker to undertake a electroplating activity which involves application of some chemicals. So I'll send these components. I'll tell my job worker, I will send you the components. You use your own chemicals to complete this electroplating activity. Now the question for the job worker is he supplying me the goods because he is also using the chemicals in doing this electroplating activity, or is he doing the service activity? Because as a customer, I am more interested in this service of electroplating rather than his chemicals. For this, we need to understand the concept of composite supply as well. What is the principal supply in which, as a manufacturer, I am interested in? If I am interested in the electroplating service, then the job worker should treat it as its activity. If it is the principal, if my interest is in the chemicals, I'm more interested in buying this chemicals from this vendor, then he should treat it as supply of chemicals. So in this example, it amounts to supply of service because I'm interested in electroplating activity. So we had parked certain questions from in the previous slide. One is understanding the treatment or process. First, we'll take up that process. So what is treatment or process? So what happens if a particular process or treatment amounts to manufacturer? Will it make any difference with respect to taxation in GST law? So for this, we may have to refer to some of the earlier decisions in the central excise regime. So there was a decision of the Supreme Court, Central Excise versus Rajasthan State Chemicals Works, 1991 Supreme Court decision, wherein the term process was very elaborately discussed. The court said that the word process is mode of treatment of certain materials in order to produce a good result. A species of activity performed. It's a species of activity performed, so it can be one or more activities on the subject matter in order to transform or reduce it to a certain stage. It is not restricting this activity to a certain process. So there could be one process or there could be any number of process. If you also refer to the dictionary meaning, it says process means a continuous or regular action or succession of actions taking place or carried on in a defined manner in order to accomplish some result. If you see this meaning, nowhere it restricts the word treatment or process, and it can go beyond the manufacturing activity also. So the ultimate process may result in a new product or it may not result in a new product. We have to understand that the term manufacture has very less relevance in GST law now. When the GST law was introduced, the term manufacture had relevance only in two places. The first was in case of composition scheme. For a manufacturer and for traders, there were two different rates for under the composition scheme. If I was a manufacturer, then I had to pay 2% tax. If I was a trader, I had to pay tax at the rate of 1% under composition. Later on, the GST was changed and there was a unified rate of 1% in these cases. Therefore, even in composition scheme, the term manufacturing has very less relevance now. The only other place in which the manufacturing is referred is in case of deemed export. When I supply the goods, so deemed export is nothing but supply of goods to a person who is a export oriented unit or who is under advanced license scheme or who is procuring under EPCG scheme. So if I'm supplying these goods to any of these three, say EPCG scheme or advanced license scheme or EOU, I have an option of paying the GST and I can go for refund of the GST or else I can ask this customer to go for the refund. The one of the condition for this benefit is that these goods which are getting removed to these customers should be manufactured in India. Say I'm importing the goods and I'm supplying these goods to any of these customers, then I don't get this benefit of deemed export wherein I can claim the refund of tax which I am paying. Other than these two places, I don't see any much relevance of manufacture in the GST law. However, thanks to various advanced rulings, so in the advanced rulings, in many places, when question came as to exemption of job work activities, so they have relied on the term manufacture in the GST law and they have given a different view, so which we will understand in our subsequent slides. In GST law, the term manufacture has been defined. The manufacturing has been defined as carrying out process or treatment on the goods which results in a new product which is having distinct name, use or character. So this can be understood with a simple example. Say I buy steel sheets, so I want my job worker to cut this sheet into different pieces. So I send him a steel sheet which is of 10 meters length. So I'll ask the job worker to cut it into 1 meter length and send me 10 different sheets. 10-meter sheets, he will make it into a 1 meter sheet into 10 pieces. So the question is it satisfying the definition of manufacture? So to understand this, we have to understand whether this 1 meter sheet is resulting in a product which is having different name, distinct name, use or character. So I don't see any difference except the length. Even though it is 1 meter length, still it is a steel sheet. Say another example, I will ask my vendor to use this steel sheet of 10 meters, then convert this into a steel plate which is used in the kitchen. So I will send him 10 meters steel sheet. What he does is he converts the steel sheet into say 50 pieces of steel plates which are used in the kitchen. When it is done by the job worker, I cannot call the steel plates which is manufactured as steel sheets. So this activity has resulted into a product which is having distinct name, distinct use, and distinct character. In the second example, the activity has clearly resulted in manufacturing activity. So these are the difference between what is manufacture, what is not manufacturing activity. And then, as I said, manufacturing term has very less relevance. But in few advanced rulings, a lot of importance has been given to the term manufacture. There was a very recent decision in 2018-19. So this decision was in case of JSW Energy Limited versus and JSW Steel Limited. So in this case, the Maharashtra Advanced Ruling Authority held that when activity is amounting to manufacturing activity, then the benefit of job work cannot be taken. One thing which we need to be very clear in GST is the advanced rulings are very dangerous. If you refer to the advanced rulings, at least 80 to 90% of the cases will be in the favor of department. It will be revenue bias. One of the reason for this could be that the members of the advanced ruling consist of one officer who is from CGST, one officer who is a state officer. Whereas in pre-GST regime, whether it could be in central excise or service tax, there used to be one officer from the tax department and there used to be one officer or one member who used to be a retired judge of the Supreme Court or High Court. So there was a lot of weightage for the advance ruling in pre-GST regime. But in GST, it is very dangerous to opt for the advance ruling, and we need not rely on the advance ruling. Only thing is that we can refer the advance ruling to understand what is the mindset or the understanding of the departmental officer with respect to a particular activity or the particular concept. So in this case, JSW Energy Limited, what happened is the appellant was he was engaged in manufacturing of the steel. So he wanted lot of energy. So what he did is he procured lot of steam coals and he sent it to a job worker who was a related party. So JSL was the applicant who is engaged in manufacturing of the steel. He sent the steam coals to a JSW Energy, which is a related party, to manufacture electricity and sent it back under the concept of job work. So because these steam coals were used in manufacture of electric energy, which was completely a different product. So the Maharashtra Advanced Ruling held that this activity cannot be considered as job work, mainly because the ultimate product is resulting in a manufactured product. Because what I'm sending is steam coal, what I'm getting is electric energy, which is a completely new product which is satisfying the definition of the manufacturer. Remember, distinct name, distinct use, and distinct character. But if we refer to the definition of job work, it says job work means treatment or process which is carried out on the goods supplied by the another registered person. There is no restriction that such treatment or process should not result in manufacture. Therefore, we need not rely on this advanced ruling of Maharashtra. This was also further confirmed even in appellate advanced ruling also, that once it is resulting in manufacturing activity, this cannot be considered as job work activity. So what was the impact of this decision on JSL? The impact was that the ruling held that because this is a related party transaction and because the concept of job work cannot be applied, when the steam coals are sent, the GST needs to be paid on the supply to the JSW Energy, then the GST has to be paid on such transactions, which will result in a lot of additional cost to these entities, because once the tax GST is paid by JSL on the steam coals, the JSW Energy cannot take the input tax credit, because what is getting manufactured is electrical energy which is out of GST net. So GST will not be paid by JSW Energy. So the taxes which are charged will become a additional cost. So that's why I said opting for advanced ruling is very dangerous. So we can also look at the alternative option of provisional assessment instead of advanced ruling. As I said, Advanced ruling, there are a lot of different views also possible. One of the decision which we can also refer in this case is BPCL. So BPCL applied for advanced ruling in Kerala in 2018. So in this case, the ruling was completely contrasting to what we understood from GSW Energy advanced ruling. So in case of this BPCL, what happened is the applicant, which is BPCL, it sent natural gas, distilled mineral water to manufacture hydrogen and nitrogen. Remember, even in this case, the activity resulted in manufacture of different product. But luckily, in this case, the Kerala Advanced Ruling Authority held that there is no restriction with respect to job work, that the job work activity should not result in manufacture. So it can result in manufacture, and accordingly, the ruling held that even though it is amounting to manufacturing activity, the BPCL can take advantage of the job work provision. They were allowed to supply these goods under job work provisions. So the another concept which we have to understand is, what do you mean by processing on the goods belonging to another registered person or the another person? What happens if I do the activity using my own goods? Will the taxation differs? Here we have to understand the meaning of the term registered person. So registered person means a person who is registered under section 25, but it does not include any person who is having unique identity number. So the definition is very simple. Next is, what happens if I do a job work activity on the goods belonging to unregistered person? Would it still be a job work activity? My answer is yes. Even if I do the job work activity for the unregistered person, it will be amounting to job work activity. It will not make any difference except in case of rate of tax, which we'll understand in subsequent slide. Job work. So job work services to another distinct person or related person. What happens? Will it amount to job work activity or will it amount to supply of goods? Here we need to understand who is a distinct person. Distinct person for the purpose of GST means single PAN, different GST registration number. So if I can take an example, let us take an example of ITC Limited. ITC Limited has a manufacturing facility in Bangalore, Karnataka. So in Bangalore, Karnataka, they have a GST registration. They have registration even in across 29 states and 6 union territories, but they have only one PAN. So in this case, they have one PAN and 29 different GST registration number. So all this GST registration number or all these persons will be considered as distinct person for the purpose of GST law. So what is the impact of considering them as distinct person? The impact is there in Schedule 1. Schedule 1 to CGST Act says that say Schedule 1 covers few activities or transactions which will be considered as supply even though there is no consideration. The best example is stock transfer. So we were not paying GST or we are not paying any taxes on stock transfer in pre-GST era, whereas in GST era we pay GST on stock transfer mainly because of the concept of Schedule 1, wherein it says that any supply of goods or services between distinct persons will be considered as supply even though there is no consideration. The question which comes is, if we'll take the same example of ITC Limited. ITC Limited is engaged in manufacture of cigarettes. So they have a manufacturing facility in Bangalore. So they manufacture these cigarettes in Bangalore, then they supply these cigarettes to Hosur, Tamil Nadu for the purpose of packing activities. And therefrom they want to supply these goods to distributors of the Tamil Nadu directly from Hosur instead of receiving it back into the Bangalore unit and sending again. So that they can save on the transportation cost. The question which can come here is whether the movement of the cigarettes from Bangalore to Hosur division in Tamil Nadu. So will this be treated as stock transfer, which is covered in Schedule 1 and liable for GST, or can I treat this activity as job work, wherein I need not pay any taxes when I do the stock transfer, and the packing activity of the cigarettes will be done in Hosur, and from Hosur I will get it clear to my distributors of Tamil Nadu. For this, my answer is that this can be considered as a job work as long as I am meeting the conditions of the job work definition. The job work definition says that the treatment or process carried out on the goods which are supplied by the another registered person. So for excuse me. So for this Hosur unit of ITC Limited, the ITC Limited Bangalore is a different registered person. So Hosur unit is doing the activity on the cigarettes which are belonging to ITC Bangalore, and it is to a registered person. Therefore, this is fulfilling all the conditions of job work, and here the benefit of job work can be undertaken or it can be used by ITC Limited. Conversion of supply contracts to job work contracts, whether it is beneficial. So we can take the same example. If ITC Limited doesn't opt for the job work option, what will happen? It will get covered under Schedule 1. Then job work, the ITC Limited Bangalore has to pay GST on this by issuing a tax invoice. Then Hosur Limited has to take the input tax credit on that. Then they have to pay the taxes when they are clearing the goods to the distributors in Hosur. Whereas if they opt for job work activity, then ITC Bangalore need not raise a tax invoice. Instead of that, a job work challan can be issued so that there is lesser cash flow in ITC Bangalore. So this is the advantage of converting the supply contract into job work contract. So this is mainly useful, mainly possible in case of distinct persons. The another question for which we need to find answer is whether I should work on the materials which are completely sent by the principal manufacturer, or is it that I can use some of my materials also? I'd like to take the same example of the electroplating activity. So in case of electroplating activity, the components will be supplied by the principal manufacturer. However, the job worker will be asked to use his chemicals, which is in very less proportion, to use it and do the electroplating activity. Is it that I'm not satisfying the condition of job work? For this, we have the answer in circular number 38 bar 12 bar 2018. So I request all the participants, in order to understand the job work procedure, you should go through this circular of 38 bar 12, which was issued in March 2018. So in this circular, it has been very clearly mentioned that the job worker is expected to work on the goods sent by the principal. However, it is also clarified that in addition to the goods which are received from the principal, the job worker can use his own goods for providing the services of job work. However, it is not answered to what extent the goods can be used by the job worker. Say I will give only, as a manufacturer, I will give only technical specification. All the goods which are required, all the skill required, all the labor required will be undertaken and taken care by the job worker. So in this case, whether it amounts to job work or not, the answer may be no. So even for this, there are a few advanced rulings and few decisions in the central excise regime which can be referred. So we'll go through some of the decisions to find answer for this issue. One of the important decision in central excise regime was Prestige Engineering versus Commissioner of Central Excise, Supreme Court decision. So in this case, it was held that when substantial materials were supplied by the job worker, then the process will not amount to job work. However, minor goods can be used. So in this case, substantial, at least 90 to 95% of the goods were procured by the job worker. Therefore, the Supreme Court held that when substantial goods were supplied by the job worker, it cannot be considered as a job work activity to take the benefit of exemption from excise duty. However, this decision was differentiated in a couple of tribunal decision later on. Remember, this Prestige Engineering decision was given based on the notification number 119, which was issued in 1975, which was a very old definition. So after this notification number 214/86, one decision was Audi Automobiles versus CCE 2019, wherein the Delhi tribunal held that the decision of Supreme Court of which is Prestige Engineering decision, it has lost its relevance and it has not considered the new concept. The new concept which was introduced in 1986 was the Modvat scheme. Whatever taxes I used to pay on my procurements or on my mainly on procurements, I used to get the benefit of Senvat credit or Modvat credit. So there used to be a revenue neutrality. So based on this decision, it was held that even though substantial materials were supplied by the job worker, still it can be considered as a job work activity. Similar view was expressed even in case of Abhinav Chemicals in the year 2012, again by the Delhi Tribunal, wherein it was held that there is no restriction on usage of the material by the job worker to consider a particular activity as job work activity. Uh, in GST regime also we have couple of advanced rulings wherein it has been held. One of the advanced ruling is SB Resellers Private Limited. So in this case it has been held that when substantial materials are being supplied by the principal manufacturer or the customer and only minor or now in this case what happened is SB resellers. So they used to get substantial materials and the customer used to supply only minor materials. So in this case it was held that this is clearly a contract which is for supply of goods. It cannot be considered as supply of job work or it cannot be considered as a supply of service activity. And accordingly, the rate of tax will be as applicable on the supply of the goods. In this case, they were asked to see what is the principal supply, and principal supply in this case was supply of goods. So therefore, it is very important for us to understand and classify a particular activity as supply of goods or supply of service. Any mistake in this classification may result in short payment or excess payment of GST. The another question which will come here is what happens in case of a repair activity? Whether repair activity will be considered as a job work activity, because even in case of repair activity, it involves doing or undertaking some treatment or process. Say I'm a chartered accountant who is engaged in practicing, so I use lot of laptops. One option for me is when these laptops get repaired, one option for me is that I ask this vendor to come to my premises and do the repair activity and put it in a right condition. So in this case, there is no issue at all. The second option is I'll send this laptop to the vendor shop, wherein he will look at the laptop, he will do repair activity. When required, he will also replace some parts. Whether this activity will be considered as job work. Why we should see whether this activity is amounting to job work or not. Mainly because in the job work, if it is considered as a job work activity, then I had to comply with certain conditions which are prescribed under the GST law. So one of the condition is intimation to the department that I'm sending these goods for job work, and I should also ensure that I get back these goods within the specified time limit. If it is not a job work, then I need not worry about all these conditions. There was one advanced ruling of West Bengal in case of Alok Bhanuka. So in this case, the transformers were sent for repair activity, wherein there was also a replacement of some worn out parts. So the advanced ruling held that this will consider the repair activity should be considered when the goods are sent for repair activity, which involves even replacement of some spare parts. It should be considered as a repair activity, and it will not be considered as a job work activity. So even in my example, when I'm sending my laptop for repair activity to my vendor's place, I will not treat this as a job work activity. Remember, there is a thin line of difference. So in case of job work activity, generally there is a new product which is emerging, whereas in case of a repair activity, already it have a completed or finished product where the vendor is doing only he is only ensuring that it is coming to a good condition. So now we'll see few examples or few activities wherein there are certain doubts whether the activity is amounting to job work or supply of goods. Similar to software, one of the burning issue in pre-GST regime was bus body building activity. So the VAT department used to consider the activity as works contract and it used to demand VAT at higher rate, whereas the service tax department also used to consider it as a works contract activity of a service and it used to demand higher service tax. In GST, the lot of issues like this have been addressed. So even in case of bus body building, it has been clarified that when I am supplying buses, wherein I build the body by purchasing the chassis on my own account, then it will be considered as supply of bus and the rate of tax will be 28%. If compensation cess is applicable, I have to pay compensation cess in addition to 28% because what I am supplying is bus, which is a supply of goods. The another possibility is I am engaged only in bus body building activity wherein the chassis will be supplied by my customer. So in this case, building of this bus body will be considered as a service activity or the job work activity wherein I may be using some of my own parts also. So it has been clarified through circular number 52 by 2018 that in this case, the activity can be treated as a service activity which is liable for 18%. In spite of the circular, there are advanced rulings. I am not sure why this advanced rulings were preferred when the circular was very clear. So in case of Tata Marco Polo Motors Limited, it was the advanced ruling held that when the body was built on job work basis, even including own inputs and capital goods, but the chassis were provided by the principal, the activity will amount to supply of service. In case of body of standardized vehicle is built without chassis, there is no chassis, but I will build standardized body and same is subsequently mounted on the chassis, then it amounts to composite supply of goods. Because in the second case, what happens is I don't have chassis, I build a body and the recipient or the customer is interested in the body which is goods. He is not interested in service. Remember the concept of composite supply. Whenever there is a composite supply, we need to identify what is the principal supply. So in this case, the principal supply will be bus body. Therefore, it was held that it is a supply of goods. There was another advanced ruling wherein it was held that the mounting or fabrication of bus, truck, or ambulance on the body or chassis supplied by the original equipment manufacturer or the principal, wherein the chassis were supplied based on the delivery challan or by any of the independent owner of the chassis by collecting job work charges. In such a case, the activity will amount to job work activity. In this case, the facility of job work can be opted wherein the GST has to be paid only on the job work charges by the job worker. Next, we'll understand what happens when the job work is undertaken in case of printing and supply of some textbooks, newspaper, books, etc. For this also, there is one circular number 11 bar 11 2017. In this case, it has been clarified that when I do a printing of books, pamphlet, brochures, annual report, or similar goods, wherein only content is given by the publisher or the person who owns the right on the content, then in such a case, the activity will be considered as supply of service because here the customer is more interested in this printing activity. So content plays a major role. Whereas in the other case, the example can be in case of supply of printed envelopes, letter cards, printed box, tissues, napkins, wall posts, etc. Here, what happens is the customer is more interested in the goods. So here, even though the supplier logo is the designer logo is given by the customer, and the paper is belonging to the printer. In such a case, the predominant supply is supply of goods. In this example, it is supply of printed envelopes, letter cards, printed boxes, tissues, etc. So in this case, the supply needs to be considered as supply of goods. There is also advanced thing which is confirming this view. One fact in this case was the advance ruling was in case of Suki Print Pack 2019 decision. One of the fact was that the principal material, that is the paper or paper board, was belonging to the applicant, whereas the content was supplied by the customer. In this case, based on this content, the paperboard or paperboard was used by the job worker and the goods were supplied. Here it was confirmed that since the printing would be the principal supply and the customer is interested in the printing activity, the activity is to be considered as a service activity, because the principal supply in this case is printing, and the tax rate will be the rate which is applicable for the service of printing. Remember, when I treat this as a service, the rate of tax will be around 5% or 12%. When I treat this as supply of goods, then the rate of tax may go up to 18%. Therefore, it is very, very important to classify our activity as supply of goods or supply of service after understanding the terms very, very clearly. The another fact which was considered here is where the principal material, that is paper or paper board, is belonging to the customer and the content is also supplied by the customer, but the job worker does only printing activity. Here in this case, it was held that the activity is of a job work activity, and accordingly the benefit of job work can be claimed by the customer. So till now we have understood what was the job work concept in central excise regime, what is the definition of job work, and what are the important advance ruling with respect to job work in GST law. Now we'll understand important job work procedures. But to understand the job work procedures, we need to understand or refer section 19 read with section 143 of the CGST Act 2017. If you refer to both these sections, the content of the provisions are more or less very similar. The section says that the principal can send any inputs. The inputs includes even intermediate goods. To take an example, say I purchase a raw material, I do some of the process on this raw materials, then the semi-finished goods or this intermediate goods will be sent for job work activity. So this is allowed in GST law. So I may send inputs as it is, or I may send even intermediate goods to my customer, or even capital goods can be sent to the job worker without payment of tax. Here it is very important to note that section 143 says that a registered person may send inputs or capital goods. The word may is very important. So the meaning which we can derive from the word may is that it is the option of the principal or the registered person to send it under job work concept without payment of GST, or he may opt to pay GST and send it for job work activity. The principal can take the input tax credit on goods, which includes inputs or capital goods which are sent for job work activity. One of the conditions for taking the input tax credit in GST law is that the registered person should receive the goods or services. When the goods are sent to the job work, the law is very clear and there is some leeway which says that even though I don't have the goods, when I send the goods for job work, still I can take the input tax credit. Even though I'm sending this goods directly from my vendor place to my job worker place, still I can take the input tax credit. I need not receive the goods first into my premises, then I send it to my job worker. So this facility was there even in central excise regime. In SEMA trade rules, the same leeway has been given even in GST law, wherein the principal manufacturer or the supplier can send the goods directly from vendor place to job worker and still eligible for input tax credit. In such a case, there is no need to reverse the input tax credit as well, stating that the goods are not received into the premises. The input tax credit will be eligible. However, there are certain conditions. One of the important condition is that the inputs are capital goods. There is some exception for the capital goods. If the capital goods are in the nature of molds or dies, jigs, fixtures or tools, there is no time limit. Whereas in case of any other inputs or capital goods, there is a time limit. If it is an input, there is a time limit of 1 year. If it is a capital goods, I have got a time limit of 3 years. If I don't receive these goods within a period of 1 year or 3 years, then such movement will be considered as supply of goods. When the goods are sent directly to the job worker, then this 1 year or 3 years will be computed from the date on which the job worker will receive the goods. So what happens if the condition of receiving back these goods within 1 year or 3 years is not satisfied? So one option in such a case is that I can make an application to the commissioner to extend the due date. So in case of inputs, the commissioner has got powers to extend the due date by another 1 year. In case of capital goods, the time limit can be extended by another 2 years. So if I get a permission, in case of raw material or inputs, I get a time limit of 2 years. In case of capital goods, I'll get a time limit of 5 years effectively. So what happens if I don't receive these goods within this period? So in such a case, what happens is the movement would be considered as supply of goods by the principal to the job worker. Let us take an example. Say on 1st April 2020, I supply my inputs to the job worker. So I should receive the inputs within a period of 31st March 2021. So if I don't receive back these goods and I also don't apply for extension of this time limit, then the movement which I made on 1st April 2020 will be considered as supply of goods, and I have to pay GST on this supply along with the interest for 1 year. So this is a very dangerous clause. So as a principal manufacturer, as a supplier, I need to ensure that I apply for this extension of time limit by another 1 year, or I should get back these goods within a period of 1 year. Otherwise, I'll end up paying GST on that along with the interest for 1 year. There is also an option which has been given in the Java provision wherein the principal manufacturer can supply these goods from the job worker place directly to the customer. So let us understand this with an example. Say I'm in Bangalore, so I have a job worker in the state of Tamil Nadu. So I also have a customer who is in the state of Tamil Nadu. So one option for me is I will ask the job worker to send back the goods after the job work. Then I will again transport the goods to my customer in Tamil Nadu, which increases my transportation cost. So to avoid this transportation cost, the another option which I have is I will ask my job worker to directly send this goods to my customer who is in Tamil Nadu, very near to my job worker place. So in this case, I can save on the transportation cost also. Considering this benefit, the central excise rules were also amended in pre-GST regime, allowing the removal of goods directly from job worker place to customer place. However, this was subject to certain condition. The principal manufacturer had to apply for approval from the assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner, and the permission used to be generally limited to 6 months to 1 year. Whereas in GST, there is no such limit, or there is no need to take permission from the assistant commissioner or any departmental officer. So, as a principal manufacturer, I had the option of sending this goods directly from my manufacturer place to, from my job worker place to my customer place. However, there is one condition for this. The condition is that the job worker should be registered under GST law. If he is not registered under GST law, then as a principal manufacturer, I need to make sure that I will add his place as my additional place in my registration certificate. However, this has some technical challenge. Say one example is my job worker is in same state. Say he is in the state of Karnataka as a principal manufacturer. I am also located in the state of Karnataka. So this job worker is in Mysore. My customer is in Mysore. So I'll ask my job worker to send these goods to my customer in Mysore directly. If he is unregistered, I will add the job worker place as my additional place in my registration place in Karnataka. sorry, in my registration certificate. Whereas if this unregistered job worker is in the state of Tamil Nadu, I can't add his place as my additional place of business in registration certificate of Karnataka. The certificate, the GST portal will not allow any additional place of other state to be added to the registration certificate. So here the two options which will be available for me is to ask the job worker to take a registration in the state of Tamil Nadu, or I should opt for a new registration in the state of Tamil Nadu. So we need to be very, very careful when we are dealing with unregistered job worker and removing the goods from job worker place, especially interstate supplies. So we understood that if the goods are not received within a period of 1 year or 3 years, or the extent period of 2 years or 5 years, what is the implication? The implication is that I need to treat it as a supply transaction and I have to pay GST along with interest for the period of 1 year. So what happens to this tax? They get back this credit of tax which I'm paying by treating this activity as a supply transaction. In GST regime, I had the option of treating this as I had the option of taking back this credit once I receive the goods after the specified time limit. Whereas in GST law, there is no benefit of taking the credit of GST paid even though I received the goods after the specified limit. So we took the example of sending the goods on job work on April 1st, 2020. So in this case, I had to pay the GST along with interest because I did not receive the goods on 1st April 2021. Say in this case, the goods were sent back after the job work activity on 30th April 2021. The question is, as a principal manufacturer, can I get back the taxes which I paid along with the interest? There is no question of taking back the credit of interest because interest is not a specified tax to take it as a credit. Even the GST amount will become a cost to me because there is no provision in the GST law which allows me to take the credit. One more option which we can explore is, can I ask my job worker to take the input tax credit of the tax which I'm going to pay? The answer is no, because one of the condition to take the input tax credit is payment within 180 days. Say I have sent capital goods which is worth 1 crore and the GST payable is 18%. So I have paid this GST of 18%, which is 18 lakhs, because I did not receive the goods within a period of 3 years or 5 years. The question is, can this job worker take the credit? The job worker cannot take the credit because he cannot make the, or he will not make the payment of 1 crore plus 18 lakhs GST to the principal manufacturer or the supplier. So he will not be satisfying one of the condition for taking the tax credit. So job worker cannot take the input tax credit. So what are the options available here? So the two options which I can see is, one option is to treat this as a purchase and supply transaction. But however, there are certain issues which may come up, mainly with respect to preparation of financial statements. So if I treat this as a supply transaction, the job work has to treat it as a purchase transaction, then he has to supply it to me. So his sales figure will get inflated to the extent of 1 crore. So there are a lot of implications on that, including the income tax aspect also. So this is a very impractical solution. Therefore, the only better option available in this case is to return the goods within a period of 1 year or 2 years in case of imports, and within a period of 3 or 5 years in case of capital goods. Otherwise, there is a huge cost which the principal manufacturer has to bear. There is one important or interesting aspect which has been clarified in circular number 38 for 2018, para number 9.6. So it says that when the goods are not received within the period of 1 year or 3 years, the GST has to be paid by the principal. It also clarifies that when the goods are returned, the job worker is also liable to pay GST. So as per me, this is not right, because when the goods are returned by the job worker, it is not a supply transaction. Remember, to treat it as a supply transaction, either it should be covered under Schedule 1, which mainly covers the transactions between the distinct persons or related parties or principal or agent, or to treat the activity as a supply, there should be a consideration. So when I'm sending the goods for job worker, there will not be any consideration. Therefore, this will not be treated as a supply transaction which has to be levied to GST. Therefore, this clarification is not right to this extent. Whose responsibility it is to keep track of the goods which are sent for job work? So it is always the responsibility of the principal manufacturer who has sent the goods for job work activity. So once in a while, the principal manufacturer has to ensure that there is a system of reconciliation to see that there is a track of goods sent with the numbers and quantities. If any goods are getting expired with respect to the time limit, then such goods needs to be received back and a fresh challan can be issued to extend the time limit of 1 year or 3 years. One more important aspect which we need to consider is to understand what is inputs, what is capital goods. The capital goods has been defined in GST law as the goods which are capitalized in the books of accounts. So therefore, to understand the time limit of 1 year or 3 years, we also need to understand how we have treated the accounting for the inputs or capital goods. If you are treated, say, if you are treated the molds as capital goods in, no, okay, we cannot take the example of molds for the reason that the time limit of 3 years or 1 year is not applicable. Say there is a particular goods which are consider it as capital goods for the purpose of accounting purpose, whereas for the purpose of GST you are considering it as inputs. Then in such a case the treatment will vary. So you need to make sure that what you are treating it as capital goods for the purpose of job work is capitalized in your books of accounts also as capital goods. There is a high probability that in many of the activities there will be a generation of waste or scrap. So what happens to this waste or scrap which is generated by the job worker? So this waste or scrap needs to be cleared on payment of tax either by the job worker or it can be cleared by the principal by raising a tax invoice on payment of GST. So we need to be very careful with respect to the arrangement which is made with respect to this waste or scrap generated. Many a times what happens is when we are fixing the prices for this jobbing activity, we will also factor in the waste or scrap generated. Say the per piece, the rate for jobbing is 10 rupees. After considering this waste or scrap which is getting generated, which can be retained by the job worker, I'll fix the rate as 8 rupees as against 10 rupees. So to this extent, there will be a short payment of GST. So many a times we may ignore this aspect. So in this case, the principal needs to make sure that he makes a tax invoice for the 2 rupees, which is towards scrap or waste, which is getting supplied by the principal manufacturer. What are the conditions with respect to documentation? The inputs or semi-finished goods or capital goods needs to be sent to the job worker under the cover of challan, which is issued by the principal. And once in a while, so we understood that there has to be an intimation by the principal manufacturer or the supplier to the department stating that the goods are being sent for job work activity. There was a question in the initial stages of GST whether this intimation has to be made for each and every transaction or should it be done periodically. So later on they introduced the concept of filing a quarterly statement in form ITC 04. So every registered person who is sending the goods for job work, he has to file a statement in form ITC 04 on quarterly basis. The due date for submission of this ITC 04 is 25th after the end of the quarter. Say the quarter is April to June, the due date for filing ITC 04 April to June is July 25th. When the job work provisions are not applicable. So the job work provisions may not apply when the principal sends the inputs or capital goods on payment of GST. Remember, we discussed that the section 143 uses the word may. The principal or the registered person may send the goods under the concept of job work. It is giving an option to pay taxes also. If I'm as a principal manufacturer, if I'm sending the goods on payment of GST, then I need not worry about the concept of receiving back the goods within a period of 1 year or 3 years, or filing of ITC 04 is also not required. However, many a times, often this may not be very practical. So majority of the cases, the principal manufacturer will prefer to send the goods under job work concept. The job work provision may not apply even in case of exempted goods or non-taxable goods, or when the goods are sent by the unregistered person. This is mainly for the reason that even if I don't fulfill the condition of receiving back the goods within a period of 1 year, 3 years, because the goods are exempted, I will not have to pay any taxes on that. But we need to be very careful. If I am a registered person and I am into supply of both taxable goods as well as exempted goods, then it is better to use job of challan even in case of exempted goods, because many times what may happen is by the time we receive back the goods from the job worker, the goods would have become taxable goods. Then proving to the department that the goods are not taxable when I send the goods, then what happens to the time of supply? So all these implications will be there, along with certain litigations. To avoid all these cases, it is better to use job work chala or job work provisions even for exempted goods if I'm a registered person dealing with both types of supply goods. The next question which arises is, when I'm sending the goods for job work, whether the job worker is required to mandatorily obtain the registration. The answer in GST is yes. The answer was no in case of central excise regime, because in central excise regime what used to happen is the entire jobbing charges were exempted from payment of any taxes. There was no levy of central excise duty, there was no levy of service tax also, subject to condition that the principal manufacturer gives an undertaking that he will pay the applicable central excise duty, or he will clear the goods for export purpose without payment of taxes or on payment of taxes. Whereas in GST regime, the jobbing charges will be subject to GST. So this job worker has to take registration if he is crossing the threshold limit. Presently, this threshold limit for services is 20 lakhs. So if he's crossing the limit to aggregate turnover at 20 lakhs in a year, he has to apply for registration and he has to obtain the registration. The next question is, what happens in case of a interstate job work transaction? Say I'm a principal manufacturer in Bangalore. I have a job worker in Hosur. So the value of jobbing which he has done is only to me, and the turnover is not crossing 20 lakhs. Say the turnover is only 10,000 rupees in entire year 2019-20. The question is whether this job worker should get a registration. The answer may be yes, because in case of interstate supply of services or interstate supply of goods, the threshold limit of 20 lakhs in case of services or the threshold limit of 40 lakhs in case of goods will not apply. Even though my value of service is 1 rupee or the value of goods is 1 rupee, and if it is an interstate supply transaction, then the supplier has to take registration mandatorily. Later on in the month of October 2017, there was an exemption notification which was issued only for job work activity. For the interstate suppliers of job work activity, they have said that the registration will not be required subject to condition that the limit is not crossing 20 lakhs. So up to 20 lakhs, even though I am making an interstate supply, the job worker need not register. However, here we need to remember that if unregistered supplier has to make supply directly to my customer place, then I had, as a principal manufacturer, I should add his place as additional place of business. If it is an interstate transaction, then I will not be able to add it. Then I may have to ask the job worker to mandatorily get the registration, even though he is not crossing the limit of 20 lakhs. So some of the key aspects in job work. So is it mandatory for a principal to opt for the job work procedure? So we have discussed this. The option is not mandatory. I may opt to pay taxes and I can leave away with the conditions of fulfilling the conditions of job work. What will be the valuation? So the valuation will be the job work charges, and if the job worker has used any materials in doing this jobbing activity, he should also add the value of such goods in for the purpose of payment of GST. There was a question. So if you remember the central excise regime, those who have handled the central excise valuation mechanism, especially in case of job work transactions, there used to be a concept of adding the amortized cost of the capital goods with the job worker. Say I'm a principal manufacturer, I supply molds or capital or some capital goods of machineries for the job worker to manufacture the goods. If the job worker had opted to pay excise duty, then he had to add amortized value of the free capital goods or free molds which are supplied by the customer or the principal manufacturer. The question was there in the GST regime also whether such amortization was required in the GST law or not. There were different views. So a few experts used to say that the concept will not apply in GST regime because GST is a completely different law and the GST is applicable only when there is a consideration. In the case, because the goods does not belong to me, the capital goods and goods which I have supplied does not belong to the job worker. Therefore, the job worker is not getting the consideration of this amortized charges. Therefore, he need not pay the taxes. Another view was that because it is not resulting in a sole consideration and there is a consideration in form of supply of capital goods, the job worker has to add the value. So in 2018, there was a circular which was issued by the department or the CBEC board wherein it was clarified that the value of the capital goods need not be added by the job worker, especially when it is the responsibility of the customer or the principal manufacturer to send such capital goods. We have understood that whatever goods we send for job work activity, all the goods should be received back within a period of 1 year or 3 years. Sometimes what may happen is along with my raw materials, I may also send some consumables. What I'll get back after the jobbing activity is the finished goods or semi-finished goods. I will not get back the consumables because the consumables would have been consumed in the process by the job worker. So there is an advanced ruling of Ratan projects and engineering wherein it has been held that the consumables need not be received. In this case, the fact was that the galvanized structure was sent for job work along with zinc furnace oil which are consumable. The Advanced Ruling Authority held that as long as the galvanized structures are returned, this is a sufficient compliance under Section 143. The zinc and furnace oil need not be received to fulfill the condition of 1 year or 3 years. So when I opt for removing the goods directly from the place of job worker, so what will happen to the time of supply and place of supply? Say I am a manufacturer situated in Bangalore, Karnataka, and my job worker is in Hosur, Tamil Nadu, and I have a customer who is also in Tamil Nadu, Hosur. So I'll ask my job worker to directly send this goods after processing to my customer. The question which comes is, what is the type of tax which needs to be paid by the principal manufacturer? Should he pay CGST, SGST because there is a intra-state movement? Because the goods are moving from Tamil Nadu to Tamil Nadu. Should he pay CGST, SGST, or should he pay IGST? So in this case, we need to understand the term interstate supply or intrastate supply. So interstate supply means the location of the supplier and place of supply are in different state. Here, the location of supplier is Bangalore and the place of supply is Tamil Nadu. Therefore, in this case, even though the movement is happening within the state, the type of GST which needs to be paid is IGST and not CGST, SGST. And what is the time of supply? So the time of supply will be that the time of removal of goods or before the removal of goods, I need to make a invoice to pay the GST. What are the documentation which needs to be used in terms of Rule 55? Whenever there is a supply of goods other than as a result of supply, the delivery challan has to be issued, which is in line with Rule 55. So if you see this Rule 55, it says that for supply of liquid gas, transportation of goods for job work, transportation of goods or for reasons other than by way of supply, or any supplies as may be notified by the CBIC board, the delivery challan has to be issued. There is a specified content which has to be there in the delivery challan. If you refer to circular number 38, they have clarified the procedure with respect to the documentation in case of job work. So this circular clarifies that the principal manufacturer has to use or he has to generate the challan in 3 copies. One copy will be written by him, 2 copies will be going to the job worker along with the goods. So when the goods are written by the job worker, he will use one challan and he will return the goods. It may so happen that the job worker may send the goods from him to another job worker from subsequent process. Then what happens? What is the procedure which needs to be followed? Is it that the principal manufacturer has to get back the goods to fulfill the condition of 1 year and again send back the goods to the another job worker? The answer is no. The circular very clearly specifies that whenever there is a subsequent movement for the purpose of job work activity from one job worker to another job worker, then a new challan can be used. So this new challan can be issued either by the first job worker or the principal can generate the job worker. The another option is the first job worker can endorse on the same challan which he has for the purpose of sending the goods to another job worker. So irrespective of the number of job work process or the number of job workers, the process of endorsement can be continued to move the goods from one job worker to another job worker, and the limit of 1 year or 3 years will start from the day on which the job worker receives back the goods from another job worker. So I need not worry about the fulfillment of condition of 1 year or 3 years. Sometimes it may so happen that I will not receive the goods completely after I send it for job work. Say I have sent 100 kgs of goods, but I may get only 10 kgs each time. The goods are returned by the job worker in a piecemeal basis. In such case, what should be the documentation? So in such a case, the process of endorsement cannot be followed. The new challan has to be generated by the job worker for the purpose of sending the goods in piecemeal basis. All these clarifications are there in circular number 38. So it is highly recommended that you go through the circular. There are one or two mistakes. One of the mistake which we also discussed is payment of GST by the job worker when the goods are returned after the specified limit, which is not correct. Otherwise, for the purpose of procedural aspect, the circular number 38 can be referred. In addition to challan, there is also a requirement of e-way bill for movement of the goods. The general rule is that whenever there is a movement of goods and the value of consignment is crossing 50,000 rupees and the goods are moving through a motorized conveyance, there is a requirement to generate a e-way bill. However, there is an exception in case of job work transaction, especially the interstate job work transaction. The rules are very clear. The rule specifies that whenever the goods are moving in case of interstate, say I am sending the goods which is worth 10,000 rupees for a job work activity to a Tamil Nadu state, Hosur. In this case, even though it is not crossing the specified limit of 50,000, I need to generate a e-way bill mandatorily. However, if this job worker is in the state of Karnataka and the value, consignment value is only 10,000, I need not generate the e-way bill for the reason that this is not crossing the specified limit of 50,000 rupees. So we need to be very careful in case of interstate supply wherein the value is not crossing 50,000, even then e-way bill has to be generated. Then the question comes is who has to generate this e-way bill? So this e-way bill can be generated either by the principal manufacturer or by the job worker or even by the transporter. There is no restriction or there is no specified condition that the e-way bill has to be generated by the specified person. Sometimes a doubt may arise whether when the goods are being sent back by the job worker, whether the job work charges should be included for the purpose of determining the consignment value. Say I have sent the goods to my job worker in the state of Karnataka and the value of the goods is 45,000 when I send the goods. After jobbing, the value may become 52,000. Say the job work charges is 52,000. Now the question which arises is when the job worker has to generate an e-way bill, should he consider 45,000 as the consignment value, wherein there is no need to generate an e-way bill, or should it be 52,000 after including his jobbing charges? So we don't find the answer in the GST rules, but my answer is even the value of jobbing should be included for the purpose of generating the e-way bill. And in our example, it is 52,000 and the e-way bill has to be generated by the job worker in Karnataka because it is crossing the specific limit of 50,000 rupees. There are certain relaxation in many of the states in case of interstate supply of job work transactions to generate the e-way bill. If you refer to the West Bengal state provisions, there is a relaxation for generating the e-way bill for movement of goods within the local area. So the provisions are made in such a way that whenever there is a movement of goods within the local area, there is no need to generate the e-way bill. Whereas in case of Karnataka, there is no such relaxation. In Karnataka, if the goods value is 50,000 or more, then e-way bill is mandatory. Similarly, in case of Gujarat, the value of the consignment value which needs to be considered for generating the e-way bill for intrastate movement is 2 lakhs as against 50,000, which is a general specific limit. Therefore, we need to be very careful, and the limit varies from state to state. However, in case of interstate Java transaction, there is no limit irrespective of the value of the goods, even though it is 5 lakhs, even though it is 500 rupees, the generation of e-way bill is mandatory. Intimation of sending the goods for job work activity. So we understood that there is a requirement to intimate the department. So such intimation has to be made in form ITC 04. So this has to be filed on a quarterly basis. So there was a relaxation which was given for the period July 17 to March 19, subject to condition that if any goods were not received from the job work movement which are made for this period, the details of such movement has to be provided in the ITC 04 form, which was filed in April 19 to June 19 quarter. If this was satisfied, then there was an exemption from filing of this ITC 04 for the period July 17 to March 2019. This is the ITC 04 form. So this has been further updated. There are additional tables which have been added to provide the details of the movement from one job worker to another job worker. One of the issue which was there in this old form is that there was no columns to show the details of the scrap or waste related. Say I send 100 kgs of goods to my job worker, whereas my final output is only 80 kgs. Balance 20 kgs is waste or scrap. So how to disclose this waste or scrap? So this provision was not there in this old form. In the recent form, this additional columns have been added to show the details of the waste or scrap, which is 20 kgs in our example. There are some concessional tax rate in case of job work services. The job work GST rate in case of intermediate production process in relation to cultivation of plants is nil. There is one clarification which has been issued with respect to this entry is milling of paddy. So I do milling of this paddy to produce rice. Whether this will be considered as a job work in relation to cultivation of plants. So it was clarified that milling activity is not in relation to cultivation of plants. As soon as the paddy is generated, the cultivation process ends, and the milling process is a different process. Therefore, it has been clarified that the milling process amounts to % GST and it is not exempted from any GST. Similarly, there is a concession rate of 5% in case of certain activities like printing of newspaper, textile and textile products printing, printing of books, manufacture of clay bricks, manufacture of handicrafts, etc. There is a rate of 12% in case of manufacturing of umbrella, printing of all goods which are falling under 48 or 49. Recently, in October 2019, a very big change or very important change was made in this notification. So the change was made in order to make the rate of tax as 12% in case of all job work activities other than what is discussed till now. If I do the activity of this job work for a registered person, then the rate of tax will be 12% in most of the cases. Whereas if I do the job work activity for a unregistered person, then the rate of tax will be 18%. So this is the major difference in case of job work activity when I do it for a registered person and unregistered person. So I need to be very careful. I need to understand what is the registration status of the person who is sending the goods for job work activity. Milling of paddy we have discussed and understood. Inverted rate refund for job worker. So there was also a clarification with respect to the fabric processors. So in case of textile, we understood that there is a concession rate of 5%. However, they procure a lot of capital goods or imports which are subject to more than 5%. It can be 12% rate or 18% rate. Since the rate of tax is 5% on the jobbing activity, there will be a accumulation of credits for such job workers. So in this case, it has been clarified that in terms of section 54 subsection 3, such job workers can opt for refund of accumulated credits, which is the inverted rate refund. The another concept which you have to understand is what happens in case of cross-border job work transaction. So there can be two types on this. One is I am sending the goods to a vendor who is outside India for the purpose of jobbing activity and return to India. Another possibility is I am the job worker, there is a manufacturer or the supplier who is outside India. I am doing the jobbing activity. So what happens is a GST. What is the taxation impact in this? First, we will take the case wherein the goods are sent from India to a vendor who is outside India for the purpose of job work activity. So in this case, still I need to satisfy the condition of 1 year or 3 years in case of capital goods because there is no special provision in respect of international transaction in case of GST. I need to fulfill the condition of intimation by filing the ITC 04. What happens to the customs implication? So should I pay GST when I move such goods? The answer is no. Here I need to examine the option of claiming the benefit under customs notification number 45/2017. So this notification says that when I re-import the goods which are sent outside India for the purpose of repair activity, then the customs duty needs to be paid only on such repair value. On the value of the goods, the GST need not be paid. The question which may come here is, I am not sending the goods for repair activity, but I am sending the goods for jobbing activity. We need to understand that the term repair or jobbing is not defined in the customs law, and whatever definition we have in GST, the same need not be applied in customs law. The next issue is what happens to GST, what happens to the customs impact in case of jobbing which is done in India. So whenever I do the jobbing activity in India, wherein the goods are supplied completely by the foreign principal, then in order to take the benefit of customs exemption, I can explore the option of going in for 32/97 notification. So according to this notification, I can receive the inputs or capital goods for the purpose of jobbing, which comes with certain conditions. One of the important condition is that I should send back the goods within a period of 6 months after doing the jobbing activity. So whereby I need not pay any customs duty. What happens to GST? Till sometime, till February 2019, when I was doing the jobbing activity, the place of supply used to be the place where the performance is done in case of goods. If it is a jobbing activity, then the performance will happen in India and the place of supply was India. So till 1st February 2019, there was a requirement to pay the GST whenever I did the jobbing activity. So from 1st February 2019, there is a amendment to section 13(3)(a) of IGST Act, wherein they have said that when the activity of repair or any other treatment or process is carried out on the goods which are supplied by another person, then the place of supply will be the place of the person who has sent the goods or the place of the recipient's location. So in such a case, there is no liability of GST. So from February 2019, I don't have to pay any GST when I do the national jobbing activity. This place of supply we need to apply even in the first case, because in the first case when I do this, when I receive the services from a foreign job worker, a question may arise whether I should pay GST under reverse charge mechanism. As we understood, the place of supply will be the place where the activity is performed. When in case of international jobbing, the performance will happen outside India, therefore the place of supply is also outside India, and there will be no need to pay any GST under reverse charge mechanism. And this is the last concept which we'll be understanding in today's session. This is very less relevant now. Transitional provision with respect to job work. So it may so happen that I have sent the goods in pre-GST regime, but not received the goods under GST regime. So initially in the transitional provision, there was a relaxation wherein I had the time limit of 6 months plus additional 2 months time limit if it is approved by the commissioner to receive back the goods. In effect, I had to receive the goods by February 2018 if I had sent any goods prior to July 2017. So it is very important for us to ensure that all the goods which are sent for the purpose of job work, including capital goods, are received by February 2018. If the any goods are not received till date, then the implication is that whatever ITC benefit which was claimed by the principal manufacturer, the same has to be paid along with the interest, which is around 18% in case of GST. So with this, I would like to conclude the session. So we are ready to take the questions. Subbu?
Yeah. Mahadev?
Yeah, Subbu.
Yeah. So there are questions. Thank you, Mahadev, for wonderful session. And we have some questions, Mahadev. So I will ask the questions and you can give the answers.
Yeah.
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah, Subbu, you're audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah, first question is repairing of motor sent to outside factory is come under job work. Do we need
Yeah,
to
we have
follow the
already
job work?
discussed. Yes, sorry, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, do we need to follow the job work provisions for this type of activities also?
Okay, this we have covered in one of the slides also. There is also advanced ruling wherein it has been clarified that the repair activity will not come into a job work concept. We need not follow the concept of job work, which includes intimation in ITC 04 or ensuring that it is received within a period of 1 year or 3 years. So it will not come into a job work concept.
Yeah,
Yes,
the next
next
question.
question.
Next question. A karigar receives gold bar bullion 100 grams from a jeweler in order to convert the same into jewelry. For this purpose, karigar adds alloy from his own account in order to strengthen it and supplies the jewelry 108 grams. So whether it will be
Yes.
considered job work or works contract.
See, there is no concept of works contract in GST now. The works contract in GST is limited to immobile property. So in case of movable property, the concept of works contract will not apply. So in this case, the first answer is whether it amounts to a job work activity. My answer is yes. And there is a, as I understand, there is a special rate in case of jewelry. I guess it should be around 1.5% in case of specified jewelry. So here the job worker need to ensure that he pays the GST on his job work charges, including the alloys which he is using to strengthen the jewelry.
Yeah. Next question, Mahadev. What shall be the treatment of loss of inputs sent to job worker by the principal?
If it is a normal loss, there is no treatment which needs to be there. But wherever there are such losses, you make sure that you make a intimation to the department about your input-output ratio as well, so that even in future there is no litigation with respect to this. So make sure that you also show the details of your loss and wastage in your ITC 04 form, which you are filing on quarterly basis. If you make sure of this, then there is no impact of such normal loss.
Yeah. Next
Next
question,
question.
Mahadev. We are doing printing of job work, paper being supplied by the principal manufacturer. Under these circumstances, we are only doing job work of printing. What is the SAC code and rate of tax needs to be charged by my customer? Please advise.
Yeah, you can refer to one of the slide wherein we have already mentioned the GST rate.
Yeah, 11, 12, 13, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It depends on the product material as well.
Yeah. Next question, Madhav. What is the impact of not filing of or delay filing in ITC 04?
There is no specific penalty which is provided for not filing or delayed filing of ITC 04. But we need to understand that in GST there is a specific section for levying the penalty in case of non-compliance of any rules or section for which there is no specific penalty. So the general penalty is 25,000 in case of SGST, 25,000 in case of CGST law. So the penalty can go up to 50,000 in such cases.
Yeah, section 125. Yeah.
Yes, section 1. Right.
Yeah. And next question. In relation to AAR, in the case of Swapna Printing Works Private Limited, West Bengal, dated 6th March 2020, wherein it is held that printing services supplied to a person outside India, content owner, and amount received in foreign forex, but delivery of books is in India and therefore not an export of service, whether the decision was correct.
Not gone through the decision, but here we need to understand the one thing is we need not rely on the advanced rulings. Advanced rulings are binding only on the person who has applied it and to the person who has given the ruling. So we need not rely on the advanced rulings, or we need not strictly follow the advanced rulings, except in cases where it is properly analyzed. So in this case also you need to analyze whether your activity is amounting to a service activity or is it amounting to a supply of goods? If it is amounting to supply of goods, then it cannot be considered as a export transaction, because for the purpose of goods, to treat it as export, the goods should move out of India. So if it is a service activity, in case of printing, because there is no specific section in IGST, so this activity will amount here. I understand that only content is being given by the customer, right?
Yeah.
In this case, this may amount to service. There are also advanced rulings which is supporting this view, but not in the context of international jobbing, but in the context of domestic services, where it has been held that this can be considered as a job work activity, and this may be treated as a export of service transaction also. So this depends on other factors.
Thank you, Mahadev, for the answer. The next question. What components can be termed as tools, dies, jigs, etc.? Is there any case law or circular defining the same?
There is no case law or circular which is there. So you need to go by the industry norms or the general understanding in the industry for understanding what is tools or dies or jigs. Plus,
Yeah.
but please be careful in such classification, because if there is any wrong classification and you don't follow the 3 years time limit, then there can be a implication which is payment of GST along with interest which you can't get back. So you need to be very careful in that.
Yeah. Next question, Mahadev. If the goods are supplied from a place of job work who is registered, then what is the POS?
Yeah, this we have already discussed. Here we need to understand what is interstate supply, what is intrastate supply. I also took the example of manufacturer being in Karnataka and the job worker being in Tamil Nadu, with customer also being in Tamil Nadu. So if I'm asking this job worker in Tamil Nadu to send the goods directly to customer in Tamil Nadu, I will be the supplier. I am being in Bangalore. So my location is in Karnataka and the place of supply will be Tamil Nadu. So I have to charge IGST even though there is a intrastate movement of goods.
Yeah. I think the next question also covered in this session, but I think again we'll read the question. If the PO states that scrap generated will be property of the job worker, will the principal need to account for the same scrap sale or pay GST on the scrap sale?
Yeah, my answer is, we have already discussed this. My answer again will be yes. So to that extent, GST needs to be paid, as this is a supply of goods by the principal manufacturer.
Yeah, the next question is, which is also covered, I think. Job work provisions are not applicable for exempted goods. Kindly help us to locate relevant legal reference for the section or notification. I think 143.
Yeah.
The next question, whether photocopier shall be classified as job worker or otherwise?
He can be considered as job work. So you can refer to one of the slides wherein we have discussed this concept as well, wherein both the contents including the material is supplied. Another example is content is given by the customer. I do only printing on my paper.
Yeah, I think 12, slide number 12.
Yeah.
The next question, Mahadev. When the job worker is registered and principal is supplying from the job worker place, then whether it will be covered as bill to ship to transaction?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, when job worker is registered and principal is supplying from job worker's place, then whether it will be treated, whether it will be covered as bill to ship to transaction?
No, this will not be considered as bill to ship to transaction. In this case, what happens is, even though the job worker is registered and I am asking him to remove the goods or supply the goods from his place to my customer place, invoice has to be from the principal manufacturer, maybe in same state or different state. So he will put his address, and the dispatch from address will be the job worker place. Place of delivery will be the place of the customer place.
Yeah, thanks, Madhav. I
The
think the
bill to
next
ship the
question,
concept will come only if I am asking the job worker to raise the invoice. So in this case, I will not ask the job worker to raise the invoice. So the concept of bill to ship will not arise here.
yeah, thanks, Madhav. The next question is most relating to auditors. Goods sent by Mr. A to his job worker was not returned within prescribed 1 year. How should the auditor report the same in 9C?
He has to report that. First, he need to check whether extension has been applied when it got expired. If there is no extension, then this will become a deemed supply, which is not specifically added in any of the tables in table 5 of GSTR 9C. So this can be mentioned in 5.0 as other adjustment, and recommendation can be made to pay the taxes.
Yeah, the next question also more relating to the same above question. ITC 4 was not filed by Mr. A in this case. Is the auditor required to mention this in GSTR 9C?
In part B, there is a requirement for the auditor to report whether all the records or documents as may be required under the GST provisions are maintained or not. So if we read that, even ITC 04 will get covered under the documentation which is specified in the GST law. So my answer for this will be yes, we need to report that this is not being filed. But we need not quantify the amount of penalty which is payable, because the penalty is up to 50,000, and it is at the discretion of the department. So as an auditor, I need not specify the amount of penalty payable. So I need not quantify that. I can just make a point stating that the ITC 04 for a specific period has not been filed for a particular. Anyway, for the period 2018-19 also, this issue will not arise, as there is a exemption from filing the ITC 04 till March 19.
Yeah. The next question. If the job worker is registered carrying activity of coloring the sarees, and while sending back the goods to principal, on which amount job worker should raise the e-way bill if the job worker does not know the value of what that saree received?
Okay. Here we need to understand what is the consignment value which is applicable, which will vary from state to state. If it is a interstate job work transaction, then the question will not arise, because irrespective of the value, I need to generate a e-way bill. If it is an intrastate transaction, if it is a border case, then it is better to generate a e-way bill. Next, the question of what is the value to be considered. The value to be considered is, I took the example of 45,000 value of the goods plus 7,000 as the job work charges. The same thing will apply here. I need to understand what is the value of the goods, and I need to add the value of job work charges. If it is crossing the specified limit, then I had to generate a e-way bill. If the supplier has not given me the value of the goods, then maybe approximate value I can take, and to be on the safer side, it is better to raise a e-way bill. We need to understand that the issue in case of e-way bill most of the time is not about the value which is declared in the e-way bill. It is mostly about raising or not raising the e-way bill. So if I have raised the e-way bill, many times the issue will not arise at all. I can always substantiate on the value, whether it is correct or not. They need not question. They will not question also in most of the cases if I have raised the e-way bill. So whenever I don't know the value, and if I think that the value may cross the specified limit, then it is better to raise a e-way bill.
Yeah, thank you, Madhav. Next question. Whether testing activity is a part of process or treatment and part of job work provisions?
As I mentioned, what is treatment or what is process is not defined in the GST law. So we need to refer to the old laws, and we also refer to the dictionary meaning. So if it is a new product, then it is ideal to treat it as a job work activity and follow the job work procedure, which includes intimation and fulfilling the condition of receiving it back within a specified period.
Yeah. The next question: whether job work outside India will be treated as import of services.
We have covered this.
Yeah. I think next one also same thing, requiring RCM under GST. That is same question.
We have covered this.
Okay.
So we need to understand what is the place of supply. So place of supply, whenever in case of goods, will be the place of performance, which is outside India. Therefore, the liability and the reverse charge mechanism will not arise. However, there may be a customs implication. I may be asked to pay the customs duty on the job work charges in terms of notification 45 or 2017, which we discussed in one of the slides.
Yeah. The next question, Madhav. A person had a factory in Bommasandra, and he is engaged in sending goods for job work through tax invoice. While receiving goods from job worker, they are also sending goods against tax invoice. Whether this activity classify as job work concept?
We refer to section 143. So the wording used is a registered person may send the goods under job work procedure without payment of tax. So it is an option which is there. So in this case, this particular person has not used the option of sending the goods without payment of taxes, which is absolutely fine. I don't see any restriction. And in this case, because the taxes are being paid and the goods are being received, the concept of job work need not be followed. No ITC 04, no restriction of 1 year or 3 years.
Yeah. The next question, Madhav. What are the implications on the e-way bill under job work if the principal send the goods on motorized vehicle, but the job worker return the goods on non-motorized vehicle?
Though this topic is relating to job work, there are many questions which are relating to e-way bill. Please understand that we need to understand the concept of e-way bill to get the answer for this. This e-way bill is not depending on the type of transaction. The e-way bill is required for movement of goods. So we need to see for each moment, is there a requirement to generate an e-way bill or not. So in the first leg of the transaction, because the goods are moving through motorized conveyance, there is a movement of goods on the motorized conveyance, there is a requirement to generate a e-way bill. In the second leg of transaction, because one of the condition, one of the requirement is to transport the goods or movement of the goods on the motorized conveyance is not getting fulfilled, there is no need to generate a e-way bill in the second leg of the transaction.
So the next question is about ITC 04 is a dual compliance process, right? Question mark. Here the conflict is many job workers whom we availed the services in financial year 17-18 had surrendered their GSTN. Now how to deal with this? Is this with respect to 9C or what?
No, I did not understand the question clearly. What I understand is maybe to understand that whether this ITC 04 needs to be filed by principal manufacturer as well as the job worker. I think that is the question. If this is the question, the answer is no. The ITC 04 is to be filed only by the person who is sending the goods for job work. Job worker need not fill the details in ITC 04. Therefore, in this case also, sorry.
No. Go ahead, Madhav.
Yeah. So in this case, the job worker being unregistered now will not make any difference. Only thing is, this principal manufacturer needs to make sure that he has the complete track of the goods which are sent for a job work and received from the job work.
Yeah. So with this, questions are over, Mahadev.
Yeah.
Thank you for the wonderful session and making it more interesting and knowledgeable session. Thank you, Mahadev.
Thank you, Subbu. Thank you. I'd like to again thank Hiraganga and Academy for the opportunity. So I wish all the best to all the participants in this learning webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you all.